Crazy.
This very well could be the clearest sign of life that we've ever found on Mars.
So last July, NASA's Perseverance rover found a leopard-spotted rock at Mars. And scientists immediately knew. It was interesting, we hadn't seen anything like that before.
What we saw in this rock...
You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, TikTok, you up to bat. Wow. It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, two things we got to do. You got to hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. You are the prize in 2025. You are the prize in 2025. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos. Before we get into it, you might want to cop the merch if you haven't already, man. Dopest design yet. But we back. We got another conspiracy. We got some stuff going on. Some ancient discovery type stuff. So bear with me with this one. You make it to the end of this one, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments. But we back in our conspiracy bag, man. So let's go ahead and get into it. Fire Squad, what's poppin'? Let's get it.
Build something that big underground just for fun.
Check this out. Give me some volume on this.
The Longyu Caves, located in the village of Xian-Beichun in Zhejiang Province, China, are a massive and majestic ancient underground world, as well as an ongoing mystery that has confounded scientists from every discipline that has researched them. 24 hand-carved caves encompassing a staggering 30,000 square meters have been found so far. Despite their magnitude and the work required to build them, no indication of their construction, or even their existence, has been discovered in archival sources. Despite the fact that the whole excavation involved about 1 million cubic meters of stone, there is no archaeological evidence explaining where that amount of stone went, nor is there evidence of the work being done. Furthermore, there isn't a single historical source that mentions them, which is extremely remarkable given the scope of the undertaking. Despite decades of analysis, the Longyu Caves mystery remains essentially unsolved.
I think we burrowed in. We had to. That's like an ancient survival shelter.
Well, they have them in Turkey as well.
Do your own research.
Archaeologists in Iraq have discovered something huge. The 4,500-year-old palace of a semi-mythical king has been discovered.
What?
It's just all too exciting. The city is called Gezu, and it's one of the oldest cities of human civilization ever to be discovered.
Really?
Home to 15,000 Sumerians, this city could date to the transition from villages to urban settlements. In other words, Gezu is the cradle of civilization and the birthplace of urban society. The Sumerian civilization, which ranged from 4,500 to 1900 BC, were the first to incorporate writing into their civilization, and this was called cuneiform, which you can see here. They were also the first to encompass cities in their culture, as well as numbering systems. Archaeologists with the British Museum have also discovered the Holy of Holies, which they have been looking for 150 years. Like the Kaaba in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, the Holy of Holies was a religious area which would have drawn pilgrims on journeys to the site every year. And archaeologists like me are super excited because it may hold many texts which could tell us more about the start of human civilization as we know it. Some of the lost tablets that we hope to find there may also contain the epic of Gilgamesh, which I will talk about in a later video. But if you don't know, it's a 4,000-year-old poem whose myths were used in the Bible. One of the archaeologists, Dr. Ray, working on this site, believes that there is a shrine to the epic warrior Gilgamesh at Gezu. With the help of texts, we may gain more insight into this myth and see if there's any truth to it. Don't forget to like and follow for more.
Hold on. So these people, this is like, she said like 4,000-year-old poem or something like that. And they was the first ones to actually like have writing in their civilization. I don't know about that. We're going to have to research this because I don't know about Shorty. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. Y'all going to have to let me know in the comments, man. That's what we here for. You know what I'm saying?
When I got up this morning and saw these images, they sent chills running down my spine. Archaeologists from the University of Chester have just announced the discovery of a hunter-gatherer settlement dating to the end of the last ice age in Scarborough, England. What's so incredible about this find is that it dates to 12,500 years ago, which is a time before metal and pottery had made its way to Britain. What this means is that any tools or weapons were entirely made of wood or antler, and that's something that just very, very rarely preserves because of how quickly organic material decomposes in sediment. I've also tagged Professor Howard Williams' page ArchaeoDeath here because he works at the University of Chester, and I'm pretty sure he can provide some pretty amazing insight onto this. But anyway, look at this thing. Oh my lord. Okay, so the team hasn't released any information about this. This is all very preliminary, but to me this indicates that whoever made this was like really experienced with hunting, because otherwise they wouldn't put these barbs in. You know, they understood the need for these barbs to keep the spear attached to their prey. As if this one's not enough, there's also this one. Boy, so I believe this is the tip of a spear, and it has decorations along each margin, which you can see there. And I'm completely speculating here because, again, we don't have any further information, but based on my own knowledge and stuff, this would seem to indicate a few different things. So I would suggest that this firstly indicates symbolic behavior, which could be purely decorative, to keep track of kills, or it may relate to some kind of spiritual or religious belief. But it also suggests that this weapon or tool was probably very, very important to whoever owned it. Also sort of indicates to me that this was a long-term tool rather than something you made and then got rid of. For example, if you were using a type of wooden spear that you know is prone to breaking because the wood's fragile or whatever like that, it seems logical that you'd be less likely to spend time decorating that spear as opposed to something more sturdy like this that would last a long time and your decoration would, you know, make sense. I also think that despite a lot of popular media still depicting hunter-gatherers as constantly on the verge of starvation, this decorative practice is a strong indicator of leisure time, which is something you wouldn't have if you were constantly searching for your next meal.
That's real.
Inside the pit where this was discovered, there's also a bunch of animal bones, including elk, red deer, beavers, and water birds that were butchered, and their bones and antlers turned into weapons and tools, which shows that there's quite a wide variety of animals being hunted and eaten here. Interestingly, many of the weapons and tools appear to have been dismantled and then placed alongside the bones in the wetlands in this pit, which the team suggests might be indicative of rules surrounding the handling of butchered animals. These finds are so important because we just have so few of them, and organic tools and materials would have made up a huge part of material culture during these times, and for the most part there's just very little record of it. So this is an absolutely huge one, and it's an amazing connection to people to see something that somebody made with their hands, and then this thing fed them and probably their families. It's just an incredible connection to the past that we just very rarely get, and I mean, I'm just so excited about this. I can't wait for the paper, and yeah, hit follow for more and check out ArchaeoDeath.
But he said a lot of that stuff was just his own opinion. He don't know shit yet.
Until like 5 years ago, we thought the Amazon was an ancient, pristine rainforest. Now we're finding cities that were bigger than anything in Europe like a couple times every year. The first Spanish expedition down the Amazon River told stories about a civilization just as impressive as the Inca or Aztecs. When the next expedition came, all they found was a dense jungle with a handful of primitive tribes. Later archaeologists thought it was impossible for a civilization to arise out of the Amazon because it actually has some of the least fertile soil on the planet. Then they started finding irregular patches of soil that was so fertile it was suspicious. Turns out it's man-made and called terra preta, and the more they found, the more people they realized could have lived here. But recently a laser imaging technology called LiDAR has gotten a lot cheaper. Now we're scanning large tracts of the jungle, and almost everywhere we're finding very impressive mounds, canals, roads, and neighborhoods. That first expedition spread diseases that killed up to 95% of the area's population. The jungle quickly overtook their mud brick cities, but now that we can see them, we're in a genuine archaeological revolution.
Wow, that's crazy though. Now that's crazy.
Guys, scans have been done around and underneath the Hawara pyramid in Egypt, and you need to see what they've found. Right, let me bring you up to speed. You've probably heard of the Lost Labyrinth of Egypt, which is supposedly underground and around the Hawara pyramid in Egypt, or what's left of it. And we know that in 2008, the Matterhorn expedition went out and LiDAR scanned the ground all the way around the Hawara pyramid and the area, and they found results consistent with reports from the 5th century BC when Herodotus went to visit the site, and he personally saw 3,000 chambers of this amazing Egyptian labyrinth. Now, the LiDAR scanning wasn't conclusive, but it was showing what they thought was meter-thick granite walls.
Damn.
What they thought previously was a granite foundation for the labyrinth turns out probably the granite ceiling.
Wow.
And it goes down way deeper. But it gets better. It gets better than these scans. I'm talking about new stuff. So in a nutshell, you can now scan deep underground using space satellites. I'm not entirely up to speed with how this works and also why this is not being done everywhere. But look what they found. Not one, but 2 distinct levels of the underground labyrinth outside Hawara, and it's freaking phenomenal.
Wow.
The first level, found 18 meters below ground, has 31 chambers.
Wow.
3 of them are bigger than Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Damn.
For size reference, that means you could fit a Boeing 737 in this underground labyrinth chamber.
Wow.
Now, there is a separate maze of chambers found at 40 meters below ground level.
Is it just me, or is this like, this is fascinating. This stuff is crazy for them to think that that was the floor. No, the ceiling. It was, they thought it was the floor, but it's the ceiling to a whole new crazy.
Which has 32 chambers, 3 of which also are bigger than an Olympic-sized swimming pool. What were they doing? Also, the tunnel and like passageway system between all of these chambers is over 1.8 kilometers long. Now, here's where things start to get a bit more mysterious. When measuring the alignment, the angle of where the underground labyrinth is aligned to compared to the Hawara pyramid above, they don't match. They don't seem to like be cohesively in sync with each other, as in the pyramid and the labyrinth are 25 degrees on the wonk, which implies that they weren't originally designed to be featured together, and that the pyramid was possibly made a lot later than the original underground chambers. So when were they made? Now, what we do know is that these scans seem to confirm exactly what Herodotus described in the 5th century when he went visiting, because in the very end of the dynastic Egyptian times, the upper part of the first level, above ground part of the labyrinth was open to visitors, because he visited and had a lovely little tour around, but they told him that he was not allowed to visit the underground, so he had to take it on a good faith, the description of what was going on there. And he said that they are, and here we're quoting Herodotus, there are double sets of chambers, which we've seen on the scans, 3,000 altogether, 1,500 above and the same number underground. We haven't found 3,000, but maybe they were like built up into smaller sections back then. We don't know. We ourselves have viewed that those that are above, and we speak of what we have seen, but we've learned through conversation about the underground chambers. The Egyptian caretakers would by no means show them to us, as they were, as they said, the burial vaults of the kings who first built this labyrinth. Interesting choice of words that Herodotus used, that not the kings that built the labyrinth, the kings who first built the labyrinth. For me, that could imply that there were stages in this construction, levels. It was something that has been developed over time, and he was referring to the first builders, but there were, if there's a first, there's got to be like other ones, right? Now, sadly, every bit of the visible above ground part of the labyrinth has entirely disappeared, because after the fall of the dynastic Egyptians, the Arab settlers came and recycled pretty much the whole site. There was like a village that outside Hawara, which was known as like a stonemason's village, where because people were coming and just chipping off whatever they wanted and repurposing it into other buildings, other structures. So what's mad is that around the world today, there are probably structures that have parts and bits of jigsaw pieces of the lost labyrinth of Egypt, and they don't even know, which absolutely breaks my heart. However, with the new satellite scans, it shows that the chambers below ground are still very much there. So we really need to like get some spades and sort this out, because we're on a time limit, because the whole area where Hawara is the groundwater is slowly rising and it's slowly being flooded. Because in the 70s, they built a dam which changed the whole underground water table. And the water table is rising in El Fayum, which is the area that it is, which is great for like crops and growing stuff, but it's bad for literally drowning the lost labyrinth and anything architectural that's been lost underground. So we need to act fast if we are ever going to see again in this civilization what the labyrinth look like. So petition to start digging ASAP. Thank you.
Fascinating stuff.
This is Barana. It is a site that has been fairly recently discovered in India, and it has recently been dated to about 9,500 years ago, making it not only the oldest Indus Valley civilization site, but possibly the oldest city in the entire world. Now,
Didn't we just hear that earlier about Sumerian or something like that? Or am I tripping? I don't know. Y'all let me know.
this site was not even excavated until 2003. And the team that excavated it put out their findings in 2016, which stated that they found evidence that shows this site to be about 9,500 years ago. That is, of course, its lowest layer. At that layer, we can safely say that it was not a city. It was a small village, representative of the Hakra ware culture in India, which is one of the oldest cultures that is found in India. And this changed the date on that culture. Previously, the oldest sites that we found that were representative of that culture were only about 5,000 years old.
Wow.
And this obviously pushed that date back much further. So while this site, the lowest layer of this site, is contemporary with the lowest layer of Jericho, they're about the same age. The dispute still is on, or the debate, is still on about whether or not both of those sites at that layer represent a city. They were definitely small settlements and are representative of the earliest stage in human agriculture, but they lack a lot of components that we require to label something a city, chiefly a very obvious and fixed hierarchical structure, as well as population size. This is an artist's reconstruction of the city of Harappa, which is a part of this same civilization, but is a much later city. I couldn't find any artist's recreation of Birana, probably due to the fact that it is such a recently discovered site. But nonetheless, being part of the same civilization, it looked similar to this. Here's another one of another Indus Valley city, Mohenjo-Daro. And here's a better look at Harappan domestic houses. Now, although it is up for debate whether or not Birana is the oldest city in the world, it is beyond a doubt one of the oldest cities. It predates the site of Harappa, which is the site that gave the Indus Valley civilization the name that we call it, by thousands of years. In fact, by the time Harappa was being established as a city, Birana had already burned out and was abandoned long after it had been established as the largest Indus Valley city. This is where the Indus Valley civilization sites are found in India. It is a civilization that, along with the Sumerians and the Yellow River Valley civilization in China, is one of the first civilizations in the entire world. Now, all these names that I am referring to the civilization as, Harappan, Indus Valley, are not what they called themselves. Those are names that archaeologists have given them because we don't know what they called themselves, because their writing has never been deciphered. We actually don't even know what the purpose of these tablets are. We do know that, well, we're pretty certain anyway, that this is representative of a written language, but we can't read it, so we can't say for certain, but we're pretty sure that these had something to do with trade, because we find these not only everywhere in the Indus Valley civilization, but all throughout Southeast Asia and even the Middle East. Not only suggesting that they were a part of trade, but that the Indus Valley civilization was well established throughout the civilized world as this trading power. Some of the most striking artifacts from this civilization is its art, which was very refined, especially for the time in which that it was being made. There wasn't really anything like this being made pretty much anywhere else in the world at the time. Another thing that makes this culture so unique is one of the things that has kept its cities from being labeled as the oldest cities in the world is the fact that we can't discern any hierarchical structure in the architecture of any of their cities. If they did have some kind of hierarchy, like kings and queens or priest rulers of any kind, it was not reflected in their architecture. All of the houses are pretty uniform. They're not They're not like run down or anything like that. They're pretty advanced for the time, but they're not palaces. There's nothing like that. Everyone kind of lived the same sort of life from what we can tell. It has led some archaeologists to speculate that this entire civilization was very egalitarian. But once again, there's no sign of that either, so we can't really say. And like I said, the architecture in all of the Indus Valley cities was very advanced for the time. The brickwork that we see all throughout the city, all of their structures, their streets, everything was some of the most sophisticated that we can find anywhere in the world at that time. Almost every house had their own personal well, and the entire city had all these gutters and everything for disposing of wastewater. It was very advanced, and the people of these cities clearly valued cleanliness to a high degree. There were a lot of public baths, just all kinds of different public works to create forms of running water for the people to use. For a long time, it was assumed by archaeologists and historians that this civilization died out and was completely replaced by the later Hindu culture that emerged in India. However, more recent studies have shown pretty conclusively that the modern Indian culture or cultures did actually evolve out of the Harappan culture. The civilization did not die out, despite all of these sites eventually being abandoned. But that didn't happen all at once. And by the time they were all abandoned, the people didn't disappear. They didn't die out. They weren't conquered and their culture completely subsumed. They had just moved on to other sites. And over time, and through the influence of incoming cultures to the Indian subcontinent, especially the Indo-European cultures, the Harappan culture just evolved into all of the modern cultures that are found throughout the Indian subcontinent, which also means that the Indus Valley civilization and the Yellow Valley civilization are two of, if not the only two, oldest continuous civilizations in the entire world.
Wow.
I want to stress the continuous part and the civilization part. There are cultures that are far older that are still going, chiefly the Aboriginal people of Australia, but civilization refers to a society that builds and is centered around cities. The Harappans did that, and contiguous refers to the fact that it never collapsed and was replaced, such as the Sumerian culture. Since the Harappan culture or Indus Valley civilization is the direct ancestors of the modern Indian cultures, that makes it a continuous, I can't speak today, culture, much like the Chinese civilization. All of this just barely scratches the surface on the Indus Valley civilization. Like all of my videos, there is so much information that I cannot even possibly begin to cram it all into a 10-minute video. So I encourage everyone to look up this site as well as all of the sites that I cover for themselves to learn more about them. And also, if you like my videos, please watch them all the way to the end. That's the only way I get paid for them. And consider supporting me through Ko-Fi, the link for which is in my bio. Right now, these videos and TikTok and the donations I get through Ko-Fi are my only form of income. So any support you can give me is much appreciated. Thank you.
Hey, that was a lot of work for that video. She put in a lot of work.
The body is frozen for all those years. There should be deterioration. But because the body was in an era that experienced freezing, then melting, it allowed for the perfect conditions of preservation without chemicals. So they named the man Utsi since he was found in Utsel Alps, and they do a radiocarbon analysis on his tissues. And they find out that Utsi is older than 4,000 years old. He's 5,300 years old. That's 3,000 years before Jesus and 700 years before the Pyramid of Giza was constructed in Egypt. He is officially the oldest preserved human being ever found on Earth. This dates Ötzi back to the Copper Age, which is the transition between Neolithic or New Stone Age and the Late Bronze Age. This is the first time ever in history that we're seeing what a human being might have actually looked like from that time period. But this was just the beginning. It's not every day that you find a well-preserved human body from 5,300 years ago. These are the kinds of finds that provide us a snapshot in time into a world of our ancestors. Ötzi was so well preserved that he still had his eyeballs, lashes, tongue, skin, all his internal organs, etc. More analysis showed that Ötzi was about 5'3" and weighed 110 pounds. He also had incredibly preserved muscles. In fact, he was so fit, a scientist said that his physical fitness was akin to a modern Olympian wrestler. A further analysis of his osteons, which are structures in your bone that help determine age, found that he was around 43 when he died. Although Ötzi was physically healthy, he had several ailments at the time of his death, including H. pylori, which is a bacteria in your gut, Lyme disease, and signs of arthritis in his joints. He's also genetically prone to arteriosclerosis, and through CT scans, they confirmed that Ötzi is the oldest known case of heart disease in the world.
Really? He had heart disease?
Archaeologists have just discovered the first pharaoh's tomb in more than 100 years. Thutmose II is the last undiscovered king of Egypt's 18th dynasty. And now that they've astonishingly found his tomb, it's become the most significant archaeological discovery since 1922, which is when they found Tutankhamun's tomb. And although Thutmose's mummy was missing, they discovered artifacts with inscriptions of his name, and it also appears the tomb to be—
They said the mummy was missing, man. We ain't gonna get into that.
Be flooded. So now they believe that more of its contents, and his mummy of course, were moved to a new undiscovered crypt nearby. The director of the excavation said the possible existence of a second and most likely intact tomb of Thutmose II is now an astonishing possibility.
I can guarantee it that most people think that Atlantis has to do with a steamy hot fish man with perfect hair, but in fact it doesn't. And Paul Schliemann is going to tell you what it really is. He says, I have discovered and photographed on the tops of the undersea mountains the walls of certain caves that show every evidence of having once been inhabited by men. On the top of one rocky mountain about 40 feet underwater, I discovered fragments of a remarkably well-preserved cave temple, the walls of which were engraved with instruments either of stone or of metal. The architecture and decoration of this temple show that whoever built it had a highly developed taste and a good understanding of the principles of engineering. My first discovery in the deep sea research was a huge square rock tablet covered with a thick layer of sea salt and shell animals. After cleaning it, I found a bas-relief of 5 running figures, a remarkably harmonious and well-designed composition. It showed that it was broken loose from a great wall, evidences of which we found here and there on the bottom of the ocean. He continues, about a mile or so further away, we discovered another similar bas-relief of 2 running men and an animal between them. This tablet was of the same volcanic granite of which the whole bottom of the ocean in this region is formed. Both tablets gave every evidence of having originated in this region and not been brought there from some other land. About 50 miles east of the spot where I discovered the later of the 2 tablets, I came upon a plateau that is only 30 feet underwater. Here I came upon a strange rock upon which are deeply engraved figures of animals and a sea devil, the work of some prehistoric artist. The most astounding discovery of my deep sea exploration was a mountain peak on the side of which I came upon the remnants of a rock temple. The floor was covered with fragments of primitive art objects, all covered with yellow coating of the deep sea sediment. Wow. Near one of the volcanic peaks, which must have been among the highest of the submerged land, we came upon many pieces of statuary and tablets. The excavated art objects of Central America and Africa show a remarkable similarity in workmanship and style. They are so much alike that you would think the same artist had carved them all. So next time, people, you're watching that steamy, hot fish man, just know they're hiding something. Love y'all, and have a good day.
They always hiding something, but you know that.
This symbol was found in the Temple of Osiris in Egypt. and it had been molecularly burned into the wall. And it's 6,000 years old. This same symbol has been found in the forbidden temples in China, sitting under the fufu dogs. And the foot on it, the flower of life, saying whoever controlled that flower of life controlled the universe. There were secrets in that flower of life that Da Vinci spent his whole life trying to uncover. There were secrets in that flower of life that Newton spent his whole life in secret trying to uncover. The same secrets that Pythagoras was desperately trying to uncover. But their problem was they kept seeing this in a two-dimensional space. They couldn't get it out of this two-dimensional frame, and as a result, they got stuck in this plane, a flat plane. Now, what Da Vinci and all of them wanted to do, they were trying to find a way to bring this flower to life, because what is inside of it? Well, apparently, there were secrets inside of it. Shapes, they got the Merkaba and all of those other things out of it. But they were misled by something I think called a straight line. You guys believe in straight lines? You believe there's straight lines in the universe? Well, let me hit you with something. All energy in the universe is expressed in what? It's in motion.
Waves.
If something is still, there's no energy.
Early Christian history was just put into question because recently archaeologists found something quite profound. In 2018, archaeologists uncovered a Roman-era cemetery near Frankfurt, Germany, in what was once the ancient Roman city, Nida. Among the graves, they discovered the remains of a man estimated to have been between 35 and 45 years old, and he was buried with a tiny silver locket. What was different about this find is what the locket contained. A small silver scroll measuring only 1.4 inches. Using advanced technology like CT scanning, experts were able to virtually unroll the scroll and read its contents. The scroll was written entirely in Latin, and it testifies to faith in Jesus Christ. It includes invocations to Jesus as the Son of God, phrases like "Holy, holy, holy," which is seen in Revelation, and references to Philippians 2:10 and 11, which declares that every tongue will confess Jesus Christ. And when they translated the scroll, they found something shocking. This amulet is now considered the oldest evidence of Christianity north of the Alps, dating back to approximately 230 to 270 CE. At that time, Christians were heavily persecuted by the Roman Empire, and this scroll speaks of surrendering one's will to Jesus, facing attacks in the world, and holding on to the faith. What makes this find even more remarkable is that it was written in Latin. Typically, Christian texts this old were going to be in Greek or Hebrew, but this indicates that Christian beliefs were spreading rapidly through Latin-speaking regions earlier than previously thought. Furthermore, the scroll contains no references to polytheistic beliefs, challenging the assumption that Roman territories of this time were entirely polytheistic. It reveals a distinct presence of monotheistic Christian faith, showing that early Christians practiced their beliefs even under the constant threat of persecution. This incredible discovery shifts our understanding of how quickly Christianity spread and how deeply it influenced individuals, even in hostile environments. If this discovery amazes you and you believe it shows the power of faith enduring across time, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's celebrate how truth of Jesus has reached far and wide. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments.
What is CE? I've heard BC, and what is CE?
Ancient Discoveries, Part 1. The internet went absolutely nuts when archaeologists discovered a 1,500-year-old Mongolian mummy that was wearing boots resembling red Adidas trainers.
What?
A group of researchers came across this massive claw while digging down a cave in New Zealand. Later on, they confirmed that it was the 3,300-year-old foot of a moa bird, a 12-foot-tall ostrich-like bird that went extinct around 700 years ago. This 2,500-year-old artifact was found in Istanbul, and many believe it depicts a modern-day space capsule.
Whoa.
If you had to guess how long ago this elephant died, what would you say? If your answer was 42,000 years, you'd be correct.
What?
Layuba is an incredibly preserved woolly mammoth calf that was found in Siberian permafrost. With their internal organs and skin still intact, Layuba is by far the best preserved woolly mammoth mummy ever found. This iron helmet dating back to the 10th century was found in Norway in 1943. It's the only complete Viking helmet ever found, and despite popular belief, there was never any proof that Vikings wore horns on their helmets.
Of course not. They got to add a little sauce to the story.
Scientists have pulled out something
incredible. It's not a Cleopatra update, but it's pretty dang close. Scientists have successfully sequenced the entire genome of the oldest ancient Egyptian DNA ever analyzed. And guess what? This guy lived when the first pyramids were being constructed. What a time to be alive, for real. Here's what they found. Meet our ancient pottery worker. This man lived well into his 60s, 4,000 years ago, which is already a feat in itself, but his genetic story is what is really fascinating. The analysis published in Nature showed that 20% of his ancestry came from West Asia. So think modern day Iran, Iraq, and Jordan, while the remaining 80% came from North Africa. This genetic mix aligns with prior archaeological evidence. Ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia were two of the most sophisticated civilizations at the time, and now we have the DNA proof that they were interacting at some level. This discovery is huge because almost everything we know about ancient Egyptian life comes from artifacts and hieroglyphics, but genetic evidence? Incredibly hard to come by. The hot, dry climate that preserves mummies so well actually destroys DNA over time. For context, only 3 ancient Egyptians have had their genome partially sequenced, and all are much more recent than our pottery guy. But advances in technology have finally allowed scientists to crack the full genetic code of this man, who was buried about 165 miles south of Cairo. Radiocarbon dating shows he lived between 2855 and 2750 BCE, around the time when the construction of the first step pyramid of King Djoser and the Great Pyramid of Giza were being built. And the details these scientists were able to uncover from so little are unbelievable. Chemical signals called isotopes in his teeth told them that he grew up in the hot, dry Nile Valley, eating wheat, barley, and other plants typical of ancient Egypt. But here's where it gets really cool, and some of you might have caught this at the very top of the video, but they could tell what his job was just from his bones. Muscle markings on his arms and shoulders show he spent long periods holding his arms out in front of him while squatting down on his ankles.
Whoa.
His skull and his vertebrae show that he spent much of his life looking down and leaning forward. His sit bones were so enlarged from sitting on a hard surface for decades. Put it all together and you get the classic posture of a potter working at his wheel. The way he was buried also tells us about his social status. He was placed in a large pottery vessel inside a rock-cut tomb, a burial style typically reserved for the upper class. So this wasn't just any potter, he was likely a skilled craftsman with upper standing. Interestingly, it was this burial method that also preserved his DNA so well. Our unnamed potter is just the beginning of a new way of understanding ancient Egyptian life through genetics. And what a way to start. If you want an even deeper dive on this topic, then head to my weekly newsletter on Substack. And for more stories like this, follow us everywhere at Today Learn Science at TIL Science.
But he don't look African and Asian. He don't.
Gunung Padang in Indonesia may officially be the oldest pyramid in the world. You know, I'm gonna be honest. I watched Graham Hancock's Netflix series last year where he shows in the very first episode of Gunung Padang and says that this is the oldest pyramid in the world, like way older than the currently established and agreed upon oldest pyramid in the world, which is the stepped pyramid of Djoser in Egypt. We collectively gave him major side eye. I know I did, but apparently he was onto something, or rather this research team was. A new study conducted by the same team who was featured in that Netflix episode published a culmination of their data, which suggests that this previously unremarkable mound may in fact be the site of the oldest pyramid in the world, called Gunung Padang, also known as the Mountain of Light. Archaeologists have long been aware of Gunung Padang's existence, but they just haven't been able to nail down the true age of the monument. In fact, when the lead researcher Akbar and his team began the dig, they were expecting to find out that Gunung Padang was no older than 2,500 years old. Now the study has determined the age to be as old as 27,000 years old.
Whoa.
That is 22,000 years before the first Egyptian pyramid was even built. So you can imagine why the archaeology world was hesitant to accept this study because this will change everything that we know, not just about human civilizations, but how advanced our ancient civilizations actually were. Because at first, Gunung Padang was thought to be this ancient graveyard because of all of the volcanic rocks resembling gravestones. But then in 2010, Danny Hillman Nawawijaja, a researcher at the Indonesian Institute of the Sciences, felt that there was more to this mound than meets the eye. He said that the mound didn't match the surrounding topography, which was very much eroded. In contrast, the mound was young, almost artificial, and around the perimeter of the site was a raised wall made up of basalt columnar rocks. Except they weren't standing up, they were purposely laid on their side with mortar in between to hold them in place. The field survey of Gunung Padang started in October of 2011 and went on to October of 2014. It was one of the most extensive and integrated studies conducted on a buried ancient structure, period. Carbon dating analysis indicated that Gunung Padang was likely built during the last ice age in the Paleolithic era. Core drillings in 7 different locations showed that Gunung Padang was built in 4 distinct stages over the course of tens of thousands of years. Jeez. And these 4 layers appear to be built roughly 1,000 years apart by 4 different builders who were basically picking up where the last builder left off. The team also found evidence of 3 chambers inside that are roughly 10 by 10 by 15 meters. And they're all aligned along the central axis of the structure, but these have yet to be further excavated. They also discovered that the site was purposely buried multiple times, possibly to hide or preserve the monument's purpose. But what is really fascinating is the time period.
The time period, yeah, right after the Ice Age is crazy.
This very well could be the clearest sign of life that we've ever found on Mars.
So last July, NASA's Perseverance rover found a leopard-spotted rock at Mars. And scientists immediately knew. It was interesting, we hadn't seen anything like that before.
What we saw in this rock were these layers of very fine-grained, rusty red mudstone that had in them these incredible features, these things that we took to calling poppy seeds, which are the sort of dark black spots in the rock, and leopard spots, which are these kind of ring-shaped features that have dark rims around them.
They've done the analysis on these leopard spots, and we think they are potentially made by some sort of ancient life.
What?
This finding by our incredible Perseverance rover is the closest we've actually come to discovering ancient life on Mars.
The discovery of a potential biosignature or a feature or signature that could be consistent with biological processes, but that requires further work and study to confirm a biological origin.
And on Mars, though?
Back in 1999, there's a guy by the name of Dr. Robert Ballard. He's known as like the underwater, he's an underwater archaeologist. He found the Titanic, he found the Bismarck, he found the USS Yorktown. He's very famous. He's kind of seen as like the underwater Indiana Jones. And he took a submersible because he went with a theory that came out of the Ivy Leagues that said, we think that there was a flood that was so significant that it overwhelmed the Black Sea and turned the Black Sea from freshwater, being an isolated lake, to where the seas rose and inundated it with all of its salt water. So the Mediterranean flooded into the Black Sea and turned the Black Sea saltwater. So he sent Hercules, his underwater submersible, to go down on the floor of the Black Sea. And in 1999, listen to this, he discovered a shoreline that was 550 feet underwater. Okay. And all of the fossils that dated 7,000 years or older were all freshwater. They were all freshwater species. And all of the species and fossils that came after that were salt. And as they're looking around 311 feet below sea level, you find the wattle and daub structure, the corners of buildings. You find tools, ceramic, stone tools of a hammer and an axe. And so here you see evidence.
Wow, the sea flooded the... Wow.
The stone vases from ancient Egypt.
This is a 3D print of
That's a 3D print of one of those.
Yeah, this is a 3D print of an actual stone vase. What the big deal is the precision in which this was constructed with handles on it. So it couldn't have been spun on a lathe.
No.
Because it has these 2 handles that are also cut out of the stone.
Yeah.
And everything is precise to within thousands of a human hair.
Yeah.
What?
Which is bananas.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense given what we are taught was the level of technology of Egypt at that time.
Even if this was modern technology, we don't know what they did.
No.
We don't know what modern technology exists that you could take an incredibly hard piece of stone and cut it into this unbelievably precise little vase with handles on it. And some bizarre method that we don't know, and hollowed out the inside of it, and some of them with very thin necks, and then a hollowed out inside. Like, how did you do that?
That is some craziness.
Terrifyingly scary ancient discoveries. Here we go. The Black Sarcophagus. Archaeologists and scientists were very hesitant to open this, fearing there would be a worldwide curse. When they opened this, they found 3 skeletons, some ancient etched drawings, and worst of all, they found ancient old sewage. The drawings were done on gold, and they are still unclear what they mean. Some archaeologists believe that the one with the snake here shown in this photo is a warning sign that you shouldn't be going through the sarcophagus. They have been going through each and every bone, but they said that the smell is overwhelmingly toxic. They do know that there was 1 woman and 2 men buried in the sarcophagus. On one of the skeletons, they actually found a hole that was surgically done and the side of his head, meaning that he had some sort of ancient surgery performed on him before he died. The worst part is there are actually people around the world that want to drink this black sewage, thinking it's the fountain of youth. That's nasty.
Man, you better stay away from that shit, boy.
Of all the things scientists have dug up from the ancient world, this is the one I wish I could make everyone aware of. If I had children, it's the one that I would take them to go see in person. This is the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, Egypt, and you can see the people on it. It's about 140 feet tall. It hasn't fallen on its side, it wasn't buried. It was unfinished, and this is how they used to make them. They would find a good patch of solid bedrock of granite and chisel that thing out by hand.
Whoa.
In order to free it from the rock, they would then have to cut holes into the bottom part, and they would slip wedges of wood under there and then soak them in water, and the expansion of the water would crack it free, and then they would have to lift this 2 million pound hunk of rock up and move it to its base, which they've also found a short distance away. As for why I would show this to my children or to anyone interested in the past, is this right here. At some point after months or probably years of working the site, and you can still see the marks from the workers' hand tools, they found a crack in it and had to abandon it.
Wow.
For any great works from a person, from a company, from a civilization, the part that you don't get to see and that you should see is all of this, all of the abandoned attempts, all of the wasted labor, all of the dashed hopes, all of the hours and hours in the hot sun, at the end of which you just had to turn around and walk away. 3,500 years later, it's still there.
That is wild. That is wild.
7 years of research, I've never seen anything like this before. This is a motor that cells use to move around. You have trillions of them in you right now. That is the top of a column in a Hindu temple. The level of detail and craftsmanship is one thing. But there's a level of geometric and engineering knowledge that is closer to what we see in aircraft manufacturing. That turbine and the biomotor both do the same thing so that an airplane and bacteria can move. If this isn't depicting the same thing, you're gonna have to explain to me where the design inspiration came from that coupler and the little stator guy right here. No way they could see these things. These things are complex molecular parts that are assembled and held together by electrons and run on electricity so bacteria can move. This little guy is what gets me though. He's like a little clutch that engages the molecules so it can spin. That's not what that is. Run it back. In the little animation, you know what you see when you look straight up into that motor? You see this thing right here. If you look straight up in one of these temples,
wow,
guess what you see? There's a pile of coincidences, and then there's a pile of explanations, and this pile is getting quite large. Last one, they may look the same, but the biomotor runs on electrical frequency, which I would have labeled with a snake if I was writing a manual for this thing.
Some of this stuff can't be explained. Most of this stuff can't be explained. Years and years later, still can't be explained.
Here are archaeological discoveries that broke the historical timeline. First off is the Antikythera mechanism. This is a 2,000-year-old computer found in Greece that we thought was impossible. This thing was incredibly complex and could predict the position of the sun and the moon, eclipses, and Greek sporting events, strangely enough. The craziest thing to me is that we've never found anything remotely similar. No writings about this, no predecessors. So was this just one genius, or are there a bunch more of these things that were lost to history? Second thing that broke our timeline was Göbekli Tepe. This is a massive temple complex 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. But this was built pre-agriculture, and we're still not sure how or why they did it. Finally, literally last year, we have these footprints in New Mexico. The most widely accepted date of human migration in the Americas was like 13 or 14,000 years ago, and these footprints push that timeline back almost 10,000 years. History and archaeology are always changing, and that's what makes them so cool.
How they finding footprints, though?
Did you see that one I posted on Instagram the other day?
No.
Oh my God, this is fucking insane. Check this out.
Central Java's lush Kedu plains in pursuit of this mythical peak near the little settlement of Burra. They chopped and burned the strangling vegetation for 6 weeks and removed tons of volcanic ash. What they discovered were marvelous figures cut in stone, thousands of them, hidden beneath the volcanic jungle.
Buddha.
Believed to have been built in the 8th and 9th century, the Borobudur temple is an uncontested marvel whose intricate architecture continues to confound scholars. Despite being one of the most important sites on Java, there is no written record of who erected it or what its intended purpose was. Because there are no inscriptions or dates on the monument, historians must make educated guesses as to when it was most likely created. The dating estimates are based purely off of architectural comparisons found elsewhere in Indonesia. Given the magnitude of the construction, it appears remarkable that no ruler or dynasty took credit for it. Borobudur is the world's biggest Buddhist temple, and yet nobody knows who built it.
Whoa.
On the Indonesian...
That's cool.
Yeah, Jamie, I'm sending you another one right now. I mean, there's a bunch of these things. There's a bunch of things like that. They're just like, I don't know.
It's a lot of shit we don't know.
Things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps, because we didn't discover it until 1820, and yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us. The astonishing thing is the so-called Pinkerton world map. It just shows a hole where Antarctica is. A Wolsey-Wooler world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. Orontius Phineas map. That map shows Antarctica exactly where it should be. There's Antarctica at the tip of South America, just south of South Africa.
And what did they call it back then?
Well, they call it the Southern Land. And it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. Antarctica was a much bigger. Now, what the fuck is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization.
Lost civilization, boy.
Stop what you're doing. Historical finds. Speed round. Archaeologists have found a 13-meter long Book of the Dead in Egypt. That is 43 feet for the Americans. The length of a largish bus. It's very exciting because it is in pristine condition and it's whole, and it's the first complete one found in this particular area. Moving on to Turkey. Archaeologists have excavated a rock. Is that wrong? A former geographical formation. Now, some people are saying it's Noah's Ark, but I'm gonna take it just.
Her camera shake is killing me. You need to set your shit up. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's...
Take a look at this thing. I personally don't look at that formation and think boat. I look at that and I think, moving on. This one is breathtaking. A 2,700-year-old alabaster statue in pristine condition depicting the Assyrian deity Lammasu. I think that's how you say it. Look at this. Look how detailed.
Wow.
This is 2,700 years old and it looks like it's brand new. That's symbolism right there. You can That's
Wow.
back 2,700 years ago. This statue would have been at the gates of the Assyrian capital city, and it was like a protection thing, you know? So historical records that were found a while ago suggested that Emperor Sima Yan paraded around his palace every night in a sheep carriage, right? So like, you know, horse and cart, but sheep. So as the story goes, the emperor, who was the founder of the Western Jin dynasty, basically used this sheep carriage, and whichever palace the sheep stopped in front of, he would sleep in that palace for the evening. Anyway, they found the carriage. I don't completely know what I'm looking at, but the archaeologists do. And I'm pretty sure that they're sheep. I think they're dead sheep. And finally, we're skipping to Norway. Glaciers are melting, and artifacts are literally popping up out of the glaciers in such rapid succession that there's now a glacier program. The archaeologists are just sprinting around finding these rare prehistoric artifacts. So a few days ago, they surpassed 4,000 artifacts from 66 different sites. Wow. And some of them are very remote. Like, check this out. That's a 900-year-old artifact just chilling, you know, because of melting. Like, look at the condition.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
That is a 3,000-year-old arrow. Follow for more.
Wow. All right, guys, that was another TikTok compilation, man, of a whole bunch of ancient discovery, mysterious artifacts that we got information about, that we don't know about, that we don't know the language. It's a lot of unsolved stuff going on, but it's a lot of stuff going on in the world, especially as the world changes. It's going to be a lot of new things that's going to be discovered, that's going to shift the way we even see and view humanity throughout the years. You see it happening throughout time. New findings, new information, and new outlooks. But you made it this far, you're a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments. Till next time, self-love and positivity. R Squad, I got you and you know it.